Hi, Sean.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for
How
having
are
me.
you, Anna?
Amazing. Yes. Good. We are on this side of the Tasman. We are relatively good. We can travel around the country without masks, so we are COVID-free.
Yeah.
That's the sunny side, and we're actually been able to run face-to-face seminars again after
That's
lockdown.
amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
hopeful for Australia at the moment. We've the cases are still isolated. They all seem to be known. There's not a lot of community transmission. So I think with Queensland, we open up again soon. Hopefully, we'll have our Trans Tasman bubble.
Yeah, we strongly hope for that because Australia is one of our main areas that we are being active, and our facilitators over there, our licensees, a lot of them are actually pinned down because they can't really move around, nor could their customers move around across state lines. And like organizations such as Royal Australian College of Surgeons, who is organizing annually several of these PCM seminars, they're also kind of hampered because surgeons can't travel far, or some can't travel interstate. So, but we hope that we're getting back to normal as we had it before.
I feel like it's close. I can see we've got a fair few of you here. It's the time on my clock is 11:02. We'll give people like 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll get started. But thank you so much for everyone that's joined us already as well. We do appreciate it. How's the weather today? And because you're Auckland, yeah?
We're in north of Wellington.
Oh, north of Wellington. Yeah. How was it there today?
It was. We actually had a lot of wet, cold weather. It was roughly around 14, 16 degrees, but very humid. It's our summer is very much influenced by La Nina. So we are expecting actually a rather cool and wet summer, unfortunately. Yeah. But hey, what can we do? We just keep going, keep kicking. Get over it and move on.
It's quite nice here in Australia today. It's quite sunny and warm, so we're lucky.
Yeah, we have been talking with you guys previously a few days ago, and with our facilitators, and they tell us about 30 degrees in Sydney.
Yeah.
Which is, can you send some of those about 10 degrees over?
We should just split it, like even it out around a nice 22 or something. That'd be perfect.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a fair few attendees there. It's 11:03. We'll start, and also if you've joined a little bit later as well, then we'll be sending out the recording as well. But look, everyone, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And today we're here to talk about like how medical professionals specifically, this is made for the medical industry, about like how you can better manage stressful situations, confrontations, conflicts, and this is the same method that NASA uses when it's selecting and training astronauts to work in high pressure situations. This is the same framework that's used by Hollywood producers and Pixar to build human insight into people. It's the same framework that's used by RACS, the Royal Australian College of Surgeons. It's a fascinating framework, and Werner is the one of the global experts in the framework. So I'm really excited to be here talking about that today. So thank you for your time, Werner.
Thank you very much, Ron, and thank you for having me, and thank you for doing the interview. Appreciate it.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Now, you've got a particularly impressive background, and I think that's a really good place for us to start, just so everyone's got context of who you are and where you come from. I know with the attendees today, it's roughly 50-50. So some people are familiar with PCM or have done some of the coursework, and some of it's a new thing for you. So for those who already know Werner, bear with us, and you might learn some things as well. And then there's some good, interesting things about new ways to engage with PCM we'll be able to talk about as well. So Werner, you actually started out in the aviation industry and you're in the military as well.
Yes, I had the privilege early on, whilst I was at college, like at the age of 16, to start flying courses under the watch of the Air Force, the Swiss Air Force. And you might be familiar, in Switzerland, we don't have an army, we are an army. So each male has basically to jump. Yeah. And I had the privilege after a long period to run up into getting actually into the Air Force by about age of 20, to actually then join the Air Force as an Air Force cadet, survived all the hurdles, or jumped all over the hurdles, and eventually after 2 years got my wings. I then spent, over the next 32 years, I spent in the average about 12 weeks annually in the Air Force, split up in blocks of 1 or 2 weeks. And the whole rest over the year, I did my main professional activity, which was I became an airline pilot, an airline manager. And I flew airlines the first 12 years as a co-pilot and later on as a captain across Europe and across the whole world. So that was an amazing experience. I was early on into training, and I was early on in very much interested by some very specific things that happened into kind of the psychology of things. I realized that the fact whether people were very easily become a pilot, whether they were rather a good ground attack pilot or whether they were rather a good air combat pilot, all that actually had to do with psychology. And then through several circumstances, I was very lucky to have had the opportunity to do a 5-year postgrad, 76 to 81, which is last millennium, in psychotherapy, including 5 years on the couch. So I had a very thorough introduction in deep psychology, according to the European model, which allowed me to have a serious insight into how people function and what's behind it. And much later on, much too late actually, I came across PCM, and that was yet another jump into a different world. So yes, that was a pretty interesting thing. And you know, when you pile up all these decades of age, you just pile up all the experiences. So I don't feel very special. I just had the opportunity to be in the right spot in the right moment several times in my life.
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating journey because obviously in aviation, whether civil or military, you know, it's life and death situations and things need to be so precise. And then when you were looking at safety, and I know one of the things you were saying there is like in 80% of incidents, it came down to human factors, right? So it was human factors that were leading to these breakdowns and tragedies in the aviation industry. And so you're probably one of the few people that then have that background in like the leadership, but then also have done the psychology as well. And so then, and you discovered PCM. Now, when we're then thinking about the that background and that history in PCM, like why did that then become relevant to the medical industry?
Well, through some things that happened basically by accident. Once we were here in New Zealand, I came in contact with some medicos. Basically, the reason why we came to New Zealand is in 2003, Air New Zealand invited me to help them introduce the Airbus. As I was one of the very few people around, was an aviation psychologist and a licensed Airbus pilot, blah, blah, blah. So I had an opportunity to come down here to New Zealand, help Air New Zealand to introduce their Airbus into their fleet. So during that time, we realized that nobody knew about PCM here in this country nor in Australia, and we saw a huge window of opportunity opening up, and that's where we jumped in. PCM then became part of our life quite quickly, and through meeting some people in very interesting places, like I was invited to speak at a conference in Brisbane about 2006, I think, on simulation medication in medicine, simulation medicine, because I did that as well. So I was sitting on the window seat, the middle seat was free, and the aisle seat, there was a gentleman sitting, reading some interesting books about brain surgery. We started to talk. This became the first surgeon that a year later recertified as a PCM facilitator. And he had such an impact on that gentleman that this gentleman actually later on walked away from being a pediatric surgeon, became a psychiatrist. And that was the initial impulse that he got. So this is, and then he took me eventually through all the motions. I ended up with the board of the Royal Australian College of Surgeons and introduced PCM to them. And then they decided to take this on board. And there was the whole ripple effect started actually from there.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's funny that the very first person then went on to become a psychologist as well. So you mentioned there, like, so a lot of notable medical organizations now using the PCM, the process communication model framework. So you mentioned RACS. Are there other organizations as well that are using the program or the skill set?
Yeah, they credit PCM training with CME points. You know, medical doctors have annually mandatorily, in a mandatory way, they have to do continuous medical education. That includes a whole range of things, of topics they have to dip in and do some accredited courses. And at the end of the year, the college is checking whether they did what they have to do, and then they get kind of the go ahead for the next year. And PCM is an accredited course, and so doctors attending PCM course, they get CME points, which is for us a fantastic thing. And I mean, it's unbelievable. I just had last week, I was running a seminar 2, which is a kind of an advanced course at the hospital in Wellington. And one gentleman who attended this course from another city, from Auckland, and he's a head of department of a large hospital there. And I could just quote what he said after the course. He said after the course, wrote us a testimonial. He said, it was an absolute eye-opener, best course I've done in the last 10 years, so applicable to both work and home life. And that's what we hear all the time. And people usually say, why the hell didn't I do this 20 years ago?
Yeah. So
the proliferation in medicine is quite strong in this part of the world, also, by the way, in Europe. And it has a reason, because medicos, in healthcare, in hospitals, you cannot muck around. It's all about, patient care. And in an operating theater, in an ICU, in an emergency department, it's all about life and death. So you can't muck around. Same thing like in a cockpit or an astronaut, they can't muck around because it's about life and death. It's a little bit different situation where somebody is just kind of responsible or accountable for the bottom line, the financial bottom line, or where you are actually accountable for helping people to survive or killing people. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
That's why medicine or medical people in the healthcare, they feel a strong neighborship or being tied up or being close to what we do in aviation. That's why the whole checklist work was introduced in medicine as well. Yeah. By the way, I just see my camera is having
yeah. I was going to let you know when you're ready. That's right.
I just hope it's going to wake up again.
I know that you've got the, if you move to the whiteboard and maybe switch the setting, maybe it'll refocus to you over there.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Perfect. But no, and that's awesome. So, and so that's a really good summary, right? So you've moved through aviation, and when really the key, it was all about human safety and that breakdown of human factors. That's exactly the same thing that's happening in medicine, where it's human factors that can lead to, a lot of not optimal outcomes, particularly when you're dealing with life and death situations. And so it's this understanding then, and PCM, or process communication model, is then this framework for actually understanding how people operate. And that'll be a nice flow through when we move into my next section. But actually how we can understand what people are working on and how to better build teams, how to better communicate, how to better manage stress, how to better manage their distress as well. Yeah.
Can I just quickly jump in? I think part of the success of PCM in medicine is that when I talk to a group of 15 surgeons, they know that where I come from, like in aviation, we were not allowed to muck around. So I cannot sell an X for a U to these guys. They have always very critical questions. We have to have the proper answer. So I think that added a lot of the credit to the credibility, knowing that we also come from professional arena where things really are serious, and people have to be able to trust you what you're doing.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, that's a really good background and understanding of it. So let's dive in. So in particular with PCM, and I know that one of the things that you've taught me is that it begins with the understanding of the human operating system. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, can I show this over there at the flip chart?
Yeah, please.
I feel much more comfortable if I can do this over here. And just give me a yell if you don't see it clearly, please.
Slightly blurry again. There we go. You're on.
Okay. So doing a lot of training and having quite some background in terms of the several models in psychology, and doing a lot of training in different professional groups around the globe, we came to some very simple conclusions. And one of the conclusions is that we function, it's not very romantic, it's pretty technical, we function a little bit like a computer. And a computer has a operating system, and the computer has up here application software. Mm-hmm. the operating system doesn't make sense without this, and this doesn't work without this. So you and I, we have also down here what we call our human operating system. It would be very interesting to talk about how this, what the elements are in here, but that would completely pump up our half-hour session. So anyway, up here we park what we learn in life. We learn how to read, to write, etc., etc. We go to school. Somebody, using this example, starts to study medicine and becomes an orthopedic surgeon. And this orthopedic surgeon, after 16 years in business, is an expert. Experts do not operate the hip bone according to how they learned at university. It's all built on that experience.
Yeah.
So this very experienced surgeon in Switzerland, 2001, amputates their own limb, the patient dies, and all the experts around the globe are scratching their head. What the hell was he thinking? In the late 70s, a very experienced airline captain of KLM Dutch Airline in Tenerife took off in thick fog without takeoff clearance with his 747, full of passengers, and crashed on the takeoff roll on the runway into another 747 of Pan Am, and there were over 570 people killed. The whole world was scratching their head. What the hell was he thinking? There was also a group of highly qualified engineers in Chernobyl that ignored warning signals and kept testing. Chernobyl blew up, and under the radioactive fallout of Western Europe, several hundred million Europeans were scratching their head. What the hell were they thinking? Sometimes we have to see, sometimes this human operated, this system called human being is pushed into a corner, pushes himself into a space where these people do things on the surface which are completely outside best interest in practice, and people think, what the hell were they thinking? They lost the plot. What is behind this? What research found out, there's something happening down here in the human operating system, and it hooks up and breaks through the membrane here, and in a narrow sector first, up here on the surface, it starts to have an impact on the pattern of thought, how we think, on the pattern of speech, how we talk, on the pattern of behavior. Usually, without going into details, but we work through this in detail in our seminars, the way I will behave here does not help me by my environment, other people responding to me that this goes down. Actually, the opposite is actually very quickly happening, and this red sector becomes very quickly quite big, and I become a walking disaster zone where I attack others, blame others, and go into victim mode to stupid, silly, dangerous mistakes. This is when we lose the plot. Why is that? Because not a lot of people have a sound, valid, and reliable understanding how they are structured down here and what the dynamics are, what the push buttons are, where they're thick-skinned, where they're thin-skinned. So if we do not know anything about something, we cannot manage it. If I have no clues about the share market, it doesn't make sense to buy shares. So if I have no clue about my human operating system, then I cannot manage it. And if this human operating system, like here with this red stuff, decides to take off and take over and influence my behavior up here, this is where I lose the plot.
Yeah.
She lost it.
Yeah.
In German, we have this, or in Switzerland, we have this nice picture which says he stands besides his shoes. Okay, it's a nice picture. This is when we lose the plot. The fact is, if we cannot manage this, we become prey. We become the victim of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, as long as this doesn't show up, as long as this doesn't happen, we might look fantastic. Clinton looked fantastic 7 years, and then Monica Lewinsky mess hit, and then was in free fall. Berlusconi, the former prime minister of Italy, looked fantastic until he was in free fall. Lance Armstrong looked fantastic, then free fall, all that stuff. And this is because people have no clue what's happening down here. And if you have no clue, we cannot manage it. So this is where PCM is focusing, and people attending our seminars after 3 days, they walk away with a pretty strong self-awareness. What is down here? What are the structural elements and what are the dynamics? Yeah. And how can I manage this in a way that this doesn't happen? If this happens to others, I can help them to do the U-turn instead of pushing them even further into the right behavior. So this is basically what the human operating system means when we talk about the human operating system.
And one of the things that you told me about that was the distinction between stress and distress. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, stress is actually a phenomenon that hits when I get under pressure, when I'm working. You know, we all have kind of an easygoing pace of work, which is an economical pace of work.
Yeah.
And the pace of work can be dong, 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 dong. And if I get under pressure, such as I'm running out of time, I'm running out of resources like money, manpower, intellectual capability, then my pace of work increase. I go dong, 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 dong. And by doing dong, 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 over here, I constantly dip into what we call the first degree, and we show our stress-related dysfunctional behaviors. No big drama, no damage, but really looking strange.
Yeah.
So, to the point, for example, I give you an example out of medicine. If the 45-year-old mom, who is a single mom, there is no dad, brings her 9-year-old boy to the hospital that needs to undergo an operation, she has never been in hospital, she's very impressed by all these doctors, she is most probably in stress. And this is the person that when the door of the lift, of the elevator opens, and she stands there with the boy, this is the person that says, oh, excuse me, and goes back, okay? These are typical stress symptoms. If a doctor asks this mother to sign a form, what the hospital can do with the kid, as long as this mom is in stress, it's basically unethical to have her sign such a document. Mm. So for medicos, which are professionals that see the general public mostly in stress, because if you are my doctor and I've been told that I have to come and see you again after my blood was tested, then I have some bad ideas what's going to happen. And when I see you, I'm most probably in stress.
Yeah. So
doctors, for example, are one of those professional groups like lawyers or business coaches who normally see the general public rather in stress than not in stress. So for them, it's very important to understand how can we help somebody instantly come out of stress.
Yeah.
De-stress is something completely different. We all have, and this is what we learn in PCM, without going too much into the details, but with PCM we learn, and PCM is a skill set, which teaches us, and we take this on board and we practice this, to look and listen for words, tones, gesture, posture, facial expressions. With that, we can decode behavior that we see, because me now talking to you or I watching you, whether we like it or not, but we constantly give away with our words, tones, gesture, posture, facial expressions who we are. We constantly give away some significant details and indicators for our psychological hardwiring, and we're very different.
Yeah.
So if I know how to connect with somebody and how to manage somebody, I can actually help that person to be happy. In addition, how to connect, these are the very critical items, whether we feel okay and motivated to deal with someone, how we are being addressed, how we are being managed, and whether I get my psychological needs met positively or not. So this thing around the psychological needs is a key issue in this whole PCM concept, because we know that if our psychological needs are not met positively, then we go into de-stress. And de-stress is, in short, I might be a person that needs, and these psychological needs can differ. They can actually change over a span of life, several times actually. And when my psychological needs, the primary motivators, what I'm looking for in life changes, then the way I deal with you, I deal with situations changes, because I'm looking for different stuff. So typically, if I'm a person that urgently needs being told that what I've been doing in terms of my job, the performance was immaculate, it was very to the detail, first class, because of that and that was all superb. And by the way, the timing was amazing. If I am needy on getting this, then looking at you, I have what we call an existential question. And the existential question is me looking at the world. I constantly see this question standing in my field of vision, transparent. The question is, am I competent? I'm constantly asking the world, am I competent? If I don't get a positive answer, I now work harder because I forcibly want to get a positive answer. Because the harder I work, the more difficult I come across. And then what I will do, I want to desperately show to you that I'm perfect. So I'm going to pile up more and more and more work and more work. The more work I pile up, the less of a chance that you can ever tell me that I'm perfect. Okay, yeah. So I don't stop. And this now when I'm in this red zone behavior and the myth takes over, I have to show you that I'm perfect. And I don't stop actually piling up more until the whole shebang crashes down on me. And then I have the burnout.
Yeah.
So this is something typical that can happen. I can show this in several examples, but this is one which might be pretty clear, and a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah. And the analogy that you've used is the battery. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, if I do not get my batteries recharged, if I do not get my needs met positively, then my battery charge collapses, goes down to zero. If I am motivated to achieve the goal, like, even I'm hurt or whatever, but I need to get through, okay, then the motivation is always there. In distress is the complete collapse of motivation. Yeah. Battery charge is zero, okay? Yeah. And I go into red zone behavior.
Yeah, and the phone turns off. So that's a really good example, right? So PCM is then this understanding of the human operating system. It's understanding like these sort of, I know we talk about the 6 existential questions that are this underlying operating system that are then manifesting in your behavior. Yeah. And so then for a medical professional, this comes in 2 really important ways. And so the first is for yourself. So if you're, you're in a critical role and your ability to manage your own stress, and there's multiple pressures and stresses, right? Like part of it is, the patient and the situation, but I think a lot of it is the resources, the workload, the hours, the political pressure. Like there's so many factors all like working against someone in the medical industry. And so there's this, you have an obligation almost to manage your own stress so that you're not moving into this distress where you're making some of those critical mistakes that we spoke about earlier as well. But then the second part of this is, once I've mastered myself, how do I help others? So if I can look at someone else and I can see, if I could begin to understand their operating system, what their challenges are and what they need, I guess, to recharge their battery and bring them into a better state, then it actually lets you start to get better outcomes from your patients and also for your team as well, right? Like it's being used a lot from a leadership area.
Totally. I'll give you an example. If my existential question is, am I competent?
Yeah.
And your existential question would be different because you would typically not primarily look for getting recognition for the quality of your work or performance or the meaningfulness of your work, but you would primarily look for recognition for you as a person.
Yeah.
If I think I'm happy by the needs that I get met positively, and I think that's probably true for everybody, and I apply the same to you, then you will go into distress. If I feed somebody's wrong needs, you'll go into distress.
Yeah.
So if your existential question is, am I lovable? And you're constantly looking to the world to get this positive answer that people like you, and I just focus on your performance, you go frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is, let me quickly show this between husband and wife, okay? Husband being this thinker that is logical, responsible, organized, time structured, performance minded. And these guys typically never say anything if everything is normal, because that's what we expect. It's nominal. So we don't have to comment on this. We usually only have to say something if something has to improve.
Yeah.
Whilst honey at home is this compassionate, sensitive, warm person that needs the hug and needs the kiss and needs to be told that she is lovely and nice. And that she is loved. Am I lovable? So this guy doesn't think that this is a requirement. So she gets desperate, and she then says, "Werner, do you actually still love me?" And Werner goes, "Of course, honey. As long as I don't say anything, you can assume it's the case. I will let you know it's not the case anymore."
Yeah.
Huh? For this is red zone behavior. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to understand how to feed people's needs. Now, in our seminars, we learn how we do that and how that can be done. And we learn how we can figure out what are your needs.
Yeah.
Okay, we can figure that out. That's part of the skill set. And once I have figured it out, it's just, if you work under my watch, if I'm your manager, I also have accountability how happy the people are that report to me.
Yeah.
If I know all this stuff, I can help these people to be okay. I cannot make you happy, but I can invite you to be happy. By addressing the way you want to be addressed, by managing the way you want to be managed, by feeding your needs, your psychological needs, I can invite you to be happy. If I have 6 direct reports and they all have different needs and different ways how they want to be approached, but I know how to do it and I can do it with 6 different people, then my life as a manager in the middle of these people is easy because everybody's highly motivated. If I approach people the wrong way, if I manage them the wrong way, if I feed the wrong needs, then probably half or 60% of my direct reports are not happy and they cannot identify with me as their boss. So they focus more over the weekend on their heavy motorbike or go fishing on the ocean or whatever it is. But they do not, they're not willing, they're not motivated to invest their energy in the professional arena because they do not feel a connection within the network where they are.
Yeah. Yep. Understood. That's fascinating. And with those, so you mentioned 2 of the existential questions there. So one being, am I competent? One being, am I lovable? And so if we've got, and I understand that all of us are made up of these different 6 elements. It's not that we don't have them, but it's like which ones have the most priority and which ones are the most important to us can then really play out in terms of our behavior and our actions and then how we express emotion and communicate with others as well. Can you run us through, I know that we can't go into depth in all of the 6 different drivers, but do you want to go into just like the 6 questions? So am I competent? Am I lovable?
Yeah. Just for example, 2 sentences for all those who are attending the seminar, who are looking to participate in this webinar and have never heard anything of PCM. Just very quickly, it started in clinical research in the early 70s, Purdue University in the US. And what they stumbled over in this research is that there are 6 discrete clusters of personality characteristics with excluding factor loadings. So 6 discrete clusters with very different properties. And then they discovered that you and I, we have all these 6 clusters in us, but in very different energy levels, in very different impacts on our life. And this can change over life, okay? So there is a structure, a human operating system, which is set at age 7, but there is dynamic change. And these 6 clusters, they come up again and again and again. And these 6 clusters, each of these 6 clusters can become my primary motivator. So if the cluster that is primarily looking for information, data, facts, and figures, which is very logical, responsible, organized, time structured, if that becomes my primary motivator, then my existential question is, am I competent? If the cluster who is primarily compassionate, sensitive, warm, and focusing on other people and relationships, if that is the one that motivates me most, then my existential question is, am I lovable? And I'm constantly looking to get a positive answer. If the type who is conscientious, observant, value-based, rule-based, strategic thinking, if that is the one that is motivating me most, then my existential question is, am I trustworthy? So typically as a leader, if everybody follows my rules, if everybody does it the way I want it to be done, also in the government, for example, then I get a positive answer to my question, am I trustworthy?
Got it.
If I'm the type who is primarily focusing on fun and humor, okay, is very creative and playful and wants to be himself and myself, and I want to do my own thing only, and I want to have fun doing it, I love that stuff, it's so cool, then my existential question is, am I acceptable? Because I'm a little bit different, because I need a lot of contact in life, okay? To get contact, I'm walking around a little bit provocatively. So my hair will be purple, I have a big ring here, I have a very loud t-shirt or very strange trousers, okay? With that, I get you laughing and I get contact and playful contact. So my existential question is, am I acceptable? Also, I'm different.
Yeah. Yep.
Then there's the type that perceives the world through action. These are the ones who are firm, direct, mission-minded, very charming, and absolute charismatic. These are people who have a tremendous charisma. They want to achieve big things, turning around a company, turning around the DHB in New Zealand, turning around a hospital in Australia, turning around a company. To do that, I need a lot of people that help me to push and pull. It's a huge task.
Yeah.
I win over these people by being charming and being very charismatic. The charisma is amazing. And if you're part of my team and I'm number one, there's no question about that. You feel so bloody privileged to be in this bandwagon, and together we are going to work and we are going to win this battle, we're going to win the war, we're going to win the world, because we have the best product, we're the best people under my watch.
Yeah.
And that's a tremendous power. And you can see this is a total different cluster, one of these five, than the one that I mentioned, which is compassionate, sensitive, warm.
Yeah.
But we have all that stuff in us.
Yeah.
The last cluster is the one that is actually everything in the world is happening in here, has a tremendous universe of imagination and fantasy. And I just need a lot of alone time. And my extension question is, am I wanted? So when I come back from the alone time and you say, wow, Werner, it's great to have you back, then I'm wanted. And let me just say one thing. These are the guys who, descending into their huge universe of imagination, come up with incredible genius solutions. And just to give you an idea where this can lead, there was one guy that 10 years spent time in a Swiss patent office in Zurich doing boring work for 10 years, but after 10 years he walked away. After 10 years inside his universe of imagination, and told the world E equal MC squared.
Yeah.
So we have representative of all these 6 types, of course, as public figures.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, you and I, we have all this stuff on board, and each of these types has a specific existential question. Now, these questions can change, and they change through, most of the time, it has to do with a crisis in life. They will completely pump up or blow up the program that we have here, if I would explain that, but this can happen. And this situation when you, with your staff, you have been working together for the past 5 years, and then one of your staff member left a year ago and went to Washington, was working in Washington, came back recently, and last night you met this person together with all the others, and you had a nice dinner. Yep. And today this person had to go to, here in Australia, to Canberra, for example, and you meet your staff member for lunch, and then you all discuss what you heard from that person in Washington, all the war stories from Washington. Was pretty amazing. And all of a sudden one of you says, well, Frank, he's still Frank, but isn't he different? Isn't he somehow different? And everybody says, yeah, he's different. Yeah, he's different. But we don't know why and how different. But we all sense it's different. This is when, through a process in Washington, his existential question changed.
Yeah, right. So we can, yeah.
If you knew me as your staff member with the existential question, am I competent? And my eyes were blinking and my face was beaming when you said that I have done a good job. I now come back and I have an existential question, am I lovable? And you again praise my job. There's nothing happening here. But if you say, Werner, I'm so happy you're back. You're such a fantastic person. I'm going to be beaming.
Yeah.
So these changes have a tremendous impact on our life. And this can lead to my job doesn't suit me anymore. My relationship doesn't suit me anymore. And pretty dramatic things can actually happen.
Yeah. Fascinating. So I understand, I've got the personality traits or clusters, and those existential questions is a nice way of thinking about each of the clusters. Yeah. All of us are then made up of different percentages and weightings of these things. And so once you understand that as the operating system, you can better manage your own stress, you can better manage your own distress. With your patients, you can better manage their stress and their distress. With your colleagues, with your team, if you're a leader, that actually then gives you, because it's, I know there's a personality profile if you look at it on an individual level, but it's actually more of a skill set. It's the ability to properly energize people and communicate with them in a way that's going to resonate with them. Yeah. Yeah.
You see, when you do a standard psychological profiling, then we would get, and there are valid Israeli stuff around, and then we would get the flashlight picture of you, Sean's psychological hardwiring here and now. Yeah. But we do not see behind the scene. We do not understand the whole logic built into your personality. Whilst we do only a profile for seminars that people eventually can relate to their own personality when we go through the motions, explaining the whole system methodology, which, by the way, as I mentioned, is based on evidence, it's reliable, it's valid, and it has been scrutinized in research again and again. There's a reason why NASA used this in '78 for NASA, for astrology group, etc., etc. So the advantage is to have a skill set that allows us to decode behavior of other people, hence to better connect with them, hence to instantly manage them in a proper way so they're motivated to cooperate and to feed their needs to avoid they go into distress. Because if they go into distress, we have a total different ballgame in our hand. If I'm the manager of people and people under my watch go into distress, I have a much bigger problem at hand than just feeding their psychological needs and taking care of them and doing maintenance as long as they're in an okay state. I had the head of several hospital psychiatric services, a psychiatrist, interestingly said after the first 3-day course, said, what I learned here is that I have to do maintenance with my psychiatrists. And psychiatrists typically go through our training, and we have people trained, psychiatrists trained as PCM facilitators. They say we urgently need this because I've been trained for years how to deal with sick people. Nobody ever told me how to manage myself and how to manage my wife and how to manage my kids and how to manage other people. Yeah. So typically when I speak to a medical audience like a conference, I usually say, ladies and gentlemen, in Australia, typically are you aware that 46% of the marriages get divorced? In New Zealand it's 42, in Switzerland it's 50. So 46% of marriages end up more or less in court. They need a judge to tell them who's going to get the kids, who's going to get the money. Why is it that not 46% of you medicos, surgeons, end up in court for malpractice? It is because you spend 7 years at university, and then after 2 years junior doctor, you spend 5 to 7 years specialty training, where you operationalize all that knowledge from university and put it and transform it into skills, 5 to 7 years before you're entitled as a fellow to put the knife into my body and cut it up under your own responsibility. So the question quickly is, how much similarly qualified training based on evidence and state regulated did you enjoy to learn how to go into a lifelong relationship with a other person in marriage or to raise kids? Yeah. And people say zip, okay? So that's a problem. And this is where PCM helps us big time to close the gap.
Yeah. And you were, I know you mentioned there about it being validated as well. In particular, you were talking, like, because you gave me some stats about one of the hospitals that had actually embraced PCM as a methodology. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, we have, for example, one hospital in Australia, which is a whole hospital group. And just to give you the outcome of years of training, the then director of all surgical services of 5 hospitals wrote in arguably one of the most complex, rapidly changing high-risk environments possible, PCM has revolutionized the way teams are interacting within our busy surgical department. Yeah. There is our other examples outside medicine. You know, sometimes when we talk to executives or people that which are about to introduce or not introduce training, a lot of these people have dollar signs in their eyes, okay? It's all about dollar signs, okay? So if I can say PCM in a worldwide company resulted in the sickness rate of the whole company going down from 6.4 down to 2.4%, then their eyes start to shine. I say PCM training resulted in 45% reduction in failure in the production line. Yeah. And basically the turnover rate of staff went down to 0. Yeah. And the management meeting times have been reduced by 40% across the board. And that's a lot of dollars. That's millions of dollars, okay? Yeah. So we have a quantitative, we have a qualitative achievement, absolutely, and it's documented.
Yeah, so you can see that improved absenteeism or decreased absenteeism. You can see like improvement in the quality of work, the outcomes of productivity. That's exciting. It's impressive.
All things like in a company, when I have a problem with you and I don't know how to address that, then I'm going to talk with another staff member behind your back about you. Okay, these are things that happen in all organizations, and this is heavily undermining the relationship. This is heavily undermining the quality of teamwork. This is heavily undermining the team cohesion and the team performance. And it happens all over the place. With PCM, we learn that this is no-go, and we have tools where we can deal with each other. Also, we might be very, very different, but we can deal with each other without going into distress. And I don't need to talk with anybody else about you because we know how to address each other.
Yeah. I can understand why it's so crucial in the medical industry as well then, because like, you know, high stress, high pressure, high teamwork, for yourself and then also for your patients, because they're obviously coming in a high, like many will be coming in a state of distress, or their family members coming in a state of distress as well. That's awesome. So, and I know one of the promises was then for people to understand like how they can manage their own stress and pressure in critical situations in using that same framework as NASA. And I think that's a really good, like, I think we've achieved that, right? So it's if you understand those 6 different drivers, you understand your existential questions. I think the phrase you used was you can operationalize that. Like you get the information there, but then operationalize that as a skill set. And so then you can start to use that in your interactions with other people as well.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a medical professional and I want to actually start to build this skill set, so for PCM, I understand there's a few different ways that I can engage with you. And and you said it does count for your CME points as well, yeah?
Yeah. There are several options. I mean, all those which are looking into this webinar, and I send you my best regards, and we have certainly met before. It's nice to meet you again here this way. All of you have an opportunity to do an online refresher, for example. Or if you have done seminar 1, you can do seminar 2, which focuses very strongly and very in-depth with conflict situation, how to deal with conflict, how to avoid and how to manage and resolve conflict. There is also a brand new seminar coming up now, and we introduced this right in January. We start with that. It's amazing. It is a leadership profile. And I'll just come back to that. It's an amazing new profile. And for all those that have not yet had any contact with PCM, please go and see our website. What I can suggest is, or what I suggest is, for example, have a look in a first touch and go session, 4 hours in the Key to Me, where I here over Zoom explain the whole system in detail, and you get your own profile and you understand what this is all about, and you can relate the system to yourself. But again, it is only information transfer and there is no training, okay? To develop skills out of information, we need to do training. And it's hands-on or mouse-open training. And we have to do this, best is face-to-face, but we also can do it actually via Zoom, for example, with these breakout rooms. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah.
So the next step will be to attend one of the 1-day or the 3-day seminars. So for all those which are watching and which are in New Zealand, from the 24th to the 26th of February, I'm actually running the next seminar in Wellington, and there we still have open seats. So if you go to our website, I think Sean, you a short slide with the website, etc. Please have a look. And it's an amazing experience. I can only say, like, just quoting this gentleman from last week who said, best course I've done the last 10 years, so applicable to both work and home life. Yeah. A lot of people in this seminar 1, after 3-4 hours, they say, Werner, you talk about me and my ex, or you talk about me and my daughter, stuff like that. People can relate to them. And the first relation is always in their personal life. It's amazing.
I was thinking about my kids when you're running through the 6 different types. So there's 2 ways I can use it. So I can use it, like, I guess there's the PCM for the individual. So if I'm thinking about me, and then there's PCM for the organization. So we'll talk about that next. For PCM for the individual, I can do the Keys to Me, and that's where I get my own individual profile. And then I spend a few hours actually understanding that profile, diving into the different things. And yeah, and I entirely appreciate, yeah, it's the transfer of knowledge, but you can't, you need to actually do the repetitions to build the skill set. So then PCM1 is more than beginning to build out that skill set, and again, counts for everyone's CME points. And that's 1 day and 3 days, depending on what people are looking at.
It's basically 3 days. And for those that cannot attend the 3 days, we have split it into 3 one-day modules. So typical hospitals who do not have the budget to send nurses to a 3-day course, they typically would say, okay, we send nurses in fiscal year 1 into the first day, in fiscal year 2, second day, et cetera, et cetera. So they get the 3 days anyway. But those who have the resources, like doctors do have the resources, the money and the time, because they have, on a mandatory basis, they have to do continuous medical education. They usually come to 3-day courses.
Of course.
If somebody is like, whether it's medical industry or healthcare or any industry, if somebody is keen to improve team cohesion, team performance, this is a fantastic tool, absolutely proven track record, where you can take a team together through the 3 days. And I've done this numerous times, and I'm not blue-eyed. In each team, there are somewhere is some bad blood around, and some people do not get along with others. We can basically, if the goodwill is there with every person, we can resolve all these problems. Guaranteed. Guaranteed.
Yeah. No, that's right. Because that makes sense to me, right? Because if I'm thinking at an organizational level, if you've got all of these people with different mix of the clusters and the personality types, so we're all trying to engage and communicate in different ways, usually that's the source of friction. And it's not that anyone is wrong, we're all just different, right? And we communicate in those different ways. Whereas if you create for lack of a better word, a common emotional language or a common emotional understanding of each other and how you operate and the right way to communicate with each other, then you can start to get the best out of each other and remove a lot of that friction.
Yeah, a typical example is early on in PCM and talking early 80s, Silicon Valley approached these guys and David Collar is behind this whole thing and said, can you help us? Because in Silicon Valley, there were executive teams that have to take multi-million-dollar decisions. And you and I, we were part of those executive teams. And I was there being frustrated and only wanted to demonstrate in an executive meeting that you, Sean, have no clue what you're talking about. And you want to demonstrate that I have absolutely no clue what I'm talking about, that I'm an idiot. So we were undermining each other. All that stuff was based on people being in distress because nobody knew, and they themselves didn't know all the stuff about psychological needs.
Yeah.
So what this helped to completely turn around these teams and to make them much more successful and effective. And we're talking about teams like Apple, Netflix, et cetera, and other teams. It's pretty amazing who actually around the world took their stuff on board.
Yeah. Well, that's why like racks, because that's the framework they're training everyone on internally as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So individually, I can do keys to me, which is the understanding of myself, my individual profile. PCM1 is then building out the skill set, and that's usually the 3-day course. PCM2 is then more advanced when you're looking at particularly crisis management and those sorts of things. And then there's the leadership course that I can now do as well. And then that's, I guess, building on those other courses and then saying, how do I develop my skills as a leader and motivating and managing my own conscious and unconscious competencies and biases around that individual level. And then at an organizational level as well, people are going in and actually saying, let's roll this out across the team. Let's roll it out across the organization to improve how we're working together. I'm going to share just for anyone that's here and interested in how to do that. I've got some information here, so I'm going to share it on my screen. So we'll pop this up here for you as well, everyone that's attended. So you should be able to see there now. We've actually just got links there for anyone that wants to then actually go and understand your own operating system and that of those around you, so you can build those better relationships and communicate and inspire and manage your own stress and manage it for other people. So you can see there, we've got the link to the PCM1 3-day seminar. You can see that there's the Keys to Me, the 4-hour session. And then over on the right, if you're looking at in-house training, individual coaching, your leadership profile, or even if those refresher courses, which do count for your CME points, you can contact Werner, and you can see there that we've got Werner's phone and email, and then the PCM website as well. And we'll email this out to everyone as well. So we'll send everyone a recording of this. So if you want to go back through and then look at refreshers and get in contact with Werner with any questions. Werner, what question should I have asked you? What have I missed?
Well, if I have just half a minute, because there are quite a number of people who have been already at PCM training, and we have this new leadership profile. And I will just give you a few hints what is in there, because I have done seminars up to CEO level, both in healthcare and outside healthcare in Australia and in New Zealand. And a lot of people might be interested in this. For example, just to give you a few bullet points reading from my list here, your stress coping symptoms and your negative attention behaviors, you face high risk of miscommunication with such and such, your potential unconscious bias, leadership character strengths and your least developed strengths, leadership motivation and sources of your motivation, leadership energy, adaptability and agility, project your motivators onto others and motivational blind spots, decision-making style, leadership stress and distress, coping symptoms and how to get back on track, and many more. It's a whole list of topics that we deal with. And this new leadership profile is amazing. It has been developed in the US, and we're happy to take this on board, and we transfer this into our branding, and we start rolling it out in January.
Wow, that's exciting stuff. All right. And for everyone that's here as well, I'm just actually popping into the chat, which you should see over on your right-hand side, left-hand side. I'll be sharing actually those links. So if you wanted to click through, you'll be seeing those there as well. And I'll put them back up on the screen as we finish off. So they'll be there for anyone that's interested. So you can jot them down there, and then also we'll send a quick email afterwards. Werner, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know that I definitely got a lot out of it, and hopefully everyone that spent their time here with us today did as well.
Thank you very much, John. It's highly motivating talking with you, and thanks for all the good questions and the opportunity to present PCM on this level. Thank you very, very much.